All right, so in this video, I'm going to finish the spoon we started. Um, Basically, I'm going to break this into two parts. One is going to be going over this because it's just make it easier to digest on the YouTube. It takes forever to upload longer videos on my phone. Um, we're going to carve this up, get a final once over on it, and then I'll do another video where I'm going to put in some details and oil it. So, um, it's all dry now. Sometimes it can be hard to tell if it's dry. The big deal is just keep it around, wherever you're drying. And if you pick it up and it feels just like room temperature, doesn't feel the temperature of it feels fine, it's probably dry. If you pick it up and it feels a little damp or feels a little bit cool to the touch, compared to room temperature, then it's probably still a little bit wet. There's some fancy ways you can get into when it comes to figuring out like the actual whatever. You can weigh it. Look, it's dry. You'll get an knack for it. Just keep trying. But now that it's dry, there's a couple things I want to do to get it a good finish on it. So again, we're going to go in the bowl. I don't really like this up here too much. And so what I'm going to do, because the bowl's a little wonky too, so what I'm going to do is just try and come with an interior line here that I like consistently. And then I'll see if I can't get the outside to kind of match that interior. Because a lot of times, well, that's how I'm going to start. And actually, I'm looking at this now and I'm realizing, this side is wonky. And when it dries, sometimes you get a little twist or sometimes you get a little wonk that shows. I think this is just from previous work. Not being as clean and tidy as I would like, but it's okay. It's still gonna be a spoon. Oh, my cat's running around. Don't, zombie. I got knives, buddy. What are you doing? You never care what I'm doing until I'm actually doing something with a knife, and then you're involved. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, all right. We've had a pet. You're a good boy. Come on, Tom. Come on, scoot your booty. Scoot your booty. You don't want to go, huh? You don't want to go, huh? You want to help me carve the spoon? No. No. You're not. Look, you don't have thumbs. Go on now. All right, I'm going to have to cuddle him. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. Rough cut and whatnot. Yeah. Just going to bring this in a little bit. Come along the top here. And I've already stropped these blades before I got started. It's always good to strop your knives. In fact, usually when I'm doing the finishing like this, I'll stop and strop a couple times just to make sure I'm getting good, clean cuts, but I won't do that today. Won't worry about it on tape or video or, on digital film. So again, I'm just kind of following the dropping grain here. So the wood's kind of going like so, and so it's got a bunch of little end bits there. So this is kind of a tough thing. So, keeping my thumb and finger together. So I'm just sort of pulling it through. And in a lot of ways here, I'm turning the spoon. I'm kind of just squeezing my hand just a little bit, just to put pressure on it so that it slides through. I'm not horking it through, I'm not pulling it through. Anyways, so then again, follow the curve down just to kind of even this out. We don't want to get it too deep. It's a spoon, not a, what do you call it? Not a ladle. And then kind of bracing the spoon against that down there. Again, if I was sitting down against a leg or stand it up, you might find it bracing against your chest. It's good to have 3 points of contact against it. And now this is dry. It may not be the most obvious here, but wherever I've carved with the knife is actually smoother than the wood before it dried. So this is putting a nice finish on it. You don't need to sand it. In fact, I would say sanding after this point with nice, sharp, stropped knives would actually make it more rough, because we're slicing through the fibers here, and rather than abrading the fibers, which is what sandpaper does. That doesn't mean sandpaper's bad. It has its place for sure. This is a really good finish, and you can just resharpen your knives and get back to work with a good finish on it. So I'm getting a little bit of a rougher spot here in the middle here. And that's just the texture of the wood. For some reason, is a little rough, so just take nibbles at it. Keep steady and smooth. You don't want to get too herky-jerky. I definitely have noticed that the more smooth the radius, the easier it is to come back again over. So those first few passes can be usually the roughest. And then once you get set in, the blade has a good path to follow and has some nice clean wood. You can get a nice clean finish. So you might have to go over it a few times. So I'm coming up on that. This is still too wonky here, so I don't want to bring it over too much that way. So we're just going to go across the bowl a little bit more. Do our best to finish that. Sorry if this isn't necessarily the best. I'm not keeping it centered in frame all the time. I'm actually looking directly at the spoon, not through the camera. Way too easy to cut yourself. All right, I mean, I don't know. You did it enough, you get the hang of it, I'm sure. Watch some of those crafting vids, like Craftsman, Steady Crafting, or Bill Makes Stuff, and sometimes I wonder, are those guys working through their... Are they looking through the camera as they're working, or... Anyways, they actually know how to do video stuff. I'm just shooting this on my phone. And I'm getting some of this rough spot over here. The grain is just not happy. I'm not exactly sure what's up with that. So I'm going to try and just follow it down. Oh, my thumb's in the way on the camera, isn't it? Follow this rough grain down rather than across. But it's also coming up over here now, so I'm going to follow it down. I think we're getting into the valley of some grain here. So we've got a couple different layers of tree tissue connecting. And it's just really not happy about it. Okay. Some of the things we can do about that. I'm going to work it from this end, and I'm going to bring this down a little bit anyway, so. Hair in there. All right, I'm not going to fiddle with this too much right now, but it definitely is a little bit of a rough spot in here that I'm not happy with. Okay, I said I was going to take this outer edge down just a little bit. Doesn't need to come up quite that much. But I've also left this thick on the end so that I can get in here and change the dimensions of this edge. It's important that you got a good edge on there. If you have too thin of an edge and you're banging it on the bottom of your bowl, it's not going to do you very good. Too fine of an edge, and it can chip. But if it's too chunky of an edge, it can be a little difficult to scoop under. You want to have there's not a particular geometry that's best. You just got to think about it in a bowl and then in the mouth. Anyways, okay. So that's going on just fine. Let's get on to this. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to bring this side in. Yeah. So let's do some of that. I'm going to do it away from me. So I want to drop down the grain. I think this whole side is just a little bit too wide. And I'm going to come down this. Since this wood is hard now, it's all dried up. It's not wet anymore. I don't know if you can see. I'm getting a little bit of a sheen on there. It's not really showing up on camera. It's harder to cut and it'll slip through. So you really got to be paying attention, being patient. Take your time, trim it down. Don't try and cut off too much. Kind of think of it as doing finishing cuts at this point. We're still shaping, but any cut you put on here could be the last cut on that spot, So slow and even helps leave a nice finish. And there's a little bit of a wobbly texture there, and I like that. I'm fine with that. You can see how thick this is versus how thick that is. It's a little thinner over here. So let's bring it in a little bit. Let's match this side and this side a little bit better. Just coming up, pushing this line. There's a line right here that I'm going to just kind of push up, carve into a little bit of a time. But also, whenever you're doing this kind of a thing, see, this is pressing against this. I'm not letting it press too much, so I'm not leveraging on this weak spot here. Oh, geez. Let me adjust this camera a little bit. So that way I'm not leveraging, when I lean it, I'm not leveraging on this spot too much. This is a weak spot. So if I'm coming in, I am grasping it well with my hand. And I'm just using this down on that as a stabilizing point more than anything. so it'll stay nice and steady. Alrighty. Alright, I think that's better matching here to there. But before we get any further, let's kind of take a more look at that. Yeah, I think I brought that in how I like it enough. It's maybe a little bit cockeyed a little bit. Bring in this top side too. Now, sometimes when it's wet, if you like the shape, you don't want to keep cutting on it, but you want to cut some other parts with this differential texture where the wood that you finished cutting when it was before it dried is a little bit different texture than the wood that you're coming over as it's dry now. Some people like that, some people don't like that. I think if you use it to make something interesting, it looks nice. But I think if you feel like it looks unfinished, well, then it looks unfinished. So if you can go all the way to basically done when it's still wet, it's pretty good. So I am going to go around the whole edge here just to help bring a good color and finish to it. Wherever I've had this has gotten a little bit of color on this edge. So it's got a little bit grungy, probably just from handling. Okay, so this tip right here is a little weird. So I'm gonna just kind of come around this outside here. Yeah, that's getting real weird. It's all right. Still a spoon. I want to do this over here. Bring this edge around again. Yeah, so one of the things I'm taking advantage of here is that this is not necessarily a flat surface, so I can scrape a little bit this side and scrape a little bit that side and kind of work the edge in how I like it. And you can see that I've brought the edge up, but there's still some wood sticking out. So I like that shape well enough. Trim this wood out here back a little bit better. End grain can be a little awkward. Do a little bit of trim up. Okay, cool. Good enough. This is still not perfect, but well, I can come along this right here. Come along that right there. Just gonna trim that up a little bit more. Cool. And this side needs a little bit of a follow through to just make sure I've gone over it a little bit. Just using that tip to just take little bits off. I'm trying to take it slow. All right. Now, at this base here, I want to give some shape to, but also I got this big sharp edge around the bottom I don't want. Conveniently, taking care of both of those at once is great. A lot of carving I find, oh, see, I'm chunking that out. So I'm pulling this too far back in the grain, so I'm lifting grain. So I'm going to have to change my situation and kind of come back a little bit. But this is one of those spots I have found consistently you'll get double pull out. Sometimes it seems like no matter what way you go, the grain just wants to pull out on you, lift up on you, whatever. Anyways, a lot of carving is creating a high spot for yourself and then knocking that high spot off in such a way that you get another high spot. This can be a pretty powerful way of allowing you to both clear out significant amounts of wood, but also do it in such a way that you're following a strategy. It's shaping. It's not just, bashing wood off. It has a intended purpose. It's nice to have both intent and purpose. All right, so now I've created a slightly less sharp edge. This could be a little thinner over here. Let's see what I got. Pardon me, shifting around. Kind of standing out here on some gravel. A little awkward. Okay. Now we're shaping the back of the bowl a little bit. Before we get too far into that, I might make sure that we've got, what's this side look like? What's this side look like? I feel like it's a more dramatic drop, and this is a little thick here, so go ahead and just take this down a little bit more. And then take some cuts across the top. One of the things about giving it some curve to it is it helps a lot with taking a little bit smaller bites with this knife. If you have a big flat spoon, which I make often, and you're trying to take a big flat cut out of that whole thing, it's just, it can leave bad. You can get chatter marks, it gets rough. It's just tough on the hands. Whereas I find it's a lot easier to take small cuts and shape the outside. So that way you're, pushing on a rise rather than cutting a big flat chunk out. Okay. So I think I still want to make sure this edge isn't too sharp. So kind of reestablished it a little bit. Knock it back. Knock it back. So I've got a little bit of lip coming up on there. This side I've come in a little bit short, so I'm going to be a little more careful. This end bit can be rough in a couple ways. I definitely have had the spoon flex and put a crack in there, so I get my finger up behind it pretty well, but not too much. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm just carefully pushing a little bit off, because what'll happen if you try and do this is that sometimes what'll happen is it'll bounce back, and it's a good way to get a weird cut bouncing it, when it goes over and bounces back up. So I'm just sort of leveraging it, pivot pointing it against my thumb, so that way we're doing sort of a this rather than a this movement. Man, good thing there's a visual medium here. If this were like a podcast, so this movement instead of a that movement. I bet you there's some specific language about different styles of cut. Actually, I have a book about it that I haven't really gotten into by a Swedish guy who's kind of the granddad of the current situation. Anyways, okay. So I'm happy enough with that. Not super happy with this rim. So I'm just gonna, it's a little sharp. Sharp bits of wood are usually pretty weak. So we're just gonna trim that sharpness back a little bit. And it shaves off really easy, which is nice, but at the same time it can be a little dangerous. Yeah, just getting a little under the wood there. A little bit of a pull out there. Oh man, there we go. See that pull out, so I'm gonna have to come back this side. Oh man, that's gotten a little bit weird. It's all right. All right, pulling up this side here, and then we're gonna come up on that red edge on either side as well. And again. Okay. Yeah. Still some roughness in here. We're gonna have to get in there with the hook knife. And it's a little wonky still. It's a little wonk. But I think I can bring that in just a little bit on this side. Maybe just a little bit more over here too. It's fine. The right level of wonk adds character, right? It's a little crooked, whatever. Okay, so now been bringing this back around, so I want to finish the back of the bowl. And it may not be super obvious here, but there's a line kind of going here and another line kind of coming up. So this line and this line are not the same level. Since I've already cut back here, I need to do the same thing over here. Take this little bit of a heel off there. Now I am, again, bracing my hands. This is a little bit cutting up some end grain. I'll be careful. There's a combo of leveraging and twisting and pushing kind of happening here just to keep a even, steady grip. And then we're going to kind of bring it back. So I want to create a little bit of a ridge coming off the back of the spoon, then transitions from the bottom of the spoon into this as a way of supporting the bottom of the spoon. following the wood grain and such. So still needs some touch up here. This has got a little bit of a heel on it too that I want to take off. It's a little high spot that's a little bit weird. I need a little bit better. This side's a lot easier because it's a lot easier to match the radius of the knife into there, one side to the other. But that's life, you know. Gotta figure it out. Okay. It's not coming together very well. Because I've got a really awkward, never done this before. I wonder how bad of an idea this is. Never really, usually I brace it against myself in a different way that I can't do with the camera. That's coming together okay. That's fine. Okay. But again, a little bit of a rise here. A little bit of a kind of a heel and take down that side of the spoon. Okay. Match this side better. Alright, now I gotta do kind of a long line here. Just pull a little bit up to get down to this little bit here. Down to the, because earlier we decided we wanted a flat and steady meat. Now especially you just want to put a little bit of kiss into that. And then I'm going to do it again from this side. I'm just taking it up about as far of a reach as is comfortable for me. You know, you got different hands and your reach would be a little different. That's fine. And then come down and finish that up. Because I'm pretty satisfied with largely with the shape here of the handle. So that'll be fine. All right. I'm just gonna a little bit more definition on that. Bring it together a little bit. And then along the top as well. Now, this is one of those where you really got to watch the grain because sometimes it'll just want to pull up. It's actually doing that a little bit, but I can just keep dropping it and go down to the spoon bowl. It should be okay. Alright, because we want the grain to be dropping, but sometimes it's a little flatter there and it'll just be a little weird. Flatten that out a little bit. Just take little shavings off. Nice clean surface. And then we're probably going to want to, let's see, try out the grain. Keep following that down a little bit. Fantastic. Alright. And then this gets a little bit tricky. We might still be going against the grain a little bit on this side, but the back of the spoon is supposed to have a little bit of a drop to it. So we're going to keep following that concept a little bit. Yeah, it's just fine. Cool. Okay. And then we're going to do the bottom as well. I'm basically just going over it once just to give it a nice, clean, fresh, smooth surface that'll finish up nicely. And a little bit of tear out there, but just take care of that. All right, so we need to get into this too. So let's see here. I think this is going to work okay. Yeah. Just want to kind of lift up, let that fuzz hang there, and then come back and just let it go a little bit. The grain direction changes here in a little bit of a weird way, so it can take a little bit of extra attention. Oh, wow, you're really looking at my thumb there, huh? of extra attention along that. Just to sort of clean it up. And then similar thing here. And again, come down there a little bit just to shave off a little bit, clean that up. Now we've got this little sharp ridge along the top. And as much as I do like that kind of detail, it just is weak. And you've even got a little bit already flickering off there. So I'm just going to flatten it out just a little. Just a little, let's see. Little curl off the top there. Okay. A little bit isn't great. One of the things I do also is you can change sort of the angle that your blade is interacting with the wood. And it can allow you to dig deeper or just sort of skim across the top where you just a little bit scraping it basically. Okay. And then I think we need to come over here. So I want the sides to sort of, oh shoot, see? I did not mean to do that. A little bit of wood lift, a little lift out, whatever you want to call that, that's okay. Come in just right behind it, take it out, clean it up. And this is the underside of the wood, so we could trim this down a little bit. It'll help the shape even. All right, now we've got a little bit of a flat side coming down, a little bit of a flat side coming down, and ideally it's just gonna okay. So now I kind of like what's going on here. Ooh, I'll get you fully in focus. Ooh. Hey, camera. Oh, there we go. So this top line is okay, and this bottom line is okay. It's a little fat right through here, a little uneven, so I just need to get in here a little bit to thin this up. Don't really need to make this any thinner. Just go around a little bit for a little bit of finishing, what have you. In terms of, so what I'll probably end up doing is actually leaving the center bit, the wood in the middle. No, I won't cut down I'll cut it down from the sides, so sort of rounding it a little bit. I still want it to have a definitive edge, but you can see if we look at it like this, it's a little bit thicker on one side and it's got a little bit of a bend to it. Again, that's not the end of the world. It'll be fine. But I'm just gonna come along. Oh, get some lift up. That's fine. And we're gonna round this edge off a little bit, or sorry, round this plane down. We're gonna make this plane convex. Yeah, convex. So that way it'll be a little bit nicer to hold. Big flat planes are nice to look at kind of, but they just end up feeling a lot like machined spoons. They don't have that, you get a little bit of roundness to things. You can have a little bit of a, I don't know, there's a certain sense of it in your hand that's a little different that I like. Doesn't mean machine made stuff is bad. But if you're gonna make it out by hand, why not make it so it feels good in your hand too? Rather than just based off aesthetic ideals. Or I guess that's the definition of an aesthetic ideal, huh? Yes, live up to the aesthetics of the handmade. It's handmade. It's supposed to look a little weird. I made it myself. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit better. Oh, you can't really see it. There we go. Again, okay, there we are. So you can kind of see how it's not flat anymore, how it's a little bit rounded off on each side. Yeah, it keeps thickness in there, which keeps strength. I mean, it's a little tiny piece of wood. Maybe that's strong, but I like it. We're gonna do the same thing on the bottom too. Just kind of rounding that side down and then rounding that, or I say rounding, just adding another plane, but whatever. And then I'm getting a little bit of a tear out on the end. Finally getting some sunny day time outside, but not very warm. My feet have just about fallen asleep. Fingers are still working though. That's good. Okay. Got a little bit of a round off on that too. This is a little more even. I think it's just a little bit like this. Yeah. Cleans that up nicely. Now I got a little bit of a divot here. That's from like a knot or something being in there. I'm not going to worry about that. Ultimately, when it's oiled, it'll catch light and actually look kind of pretty. And it doesn't take away from anything that's happening here. I am just going to just a little bit of scrapings around this. Just trying to get in here a little bit. Clean up the surface here so that it's kind of nice. Find with a lot of knots, what you want to end up doing is kind of working towards them or working away from them. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but some knots, all your cuts towards the knot will end up being great. Other knots, all your cuts away from the knot will be great, and everything else will pull up. So you gotta just fiddle with it. And honestly, if you have a big knot and it's too much of an issue, don't just move on with your life. Okay, yeah, I think this side I could come. Oh, geez. Okay, well, let's do it like so. Not a whole lot to hold on to there. I just want to. There we go. Clean that up just a little bit. That's a little wonk. And then this needs to be cleaned up too, right? So this is supposed to be falling grain because it's getting a little bit narrower here, but we're dealing with the grain in all kinds of ways, and sometimes it'll lift out, so you just got to take your time. If you get that dreaded lift out, change your cutting direction, it'll be fine. Okay, getting up on the finish here, and this isn't got a little bit of wonk weirdness to it. I'm just going to round it off a little bit. You can get fancy at the tips, and that can be quite nice. But I'm just going to make it work for now. It's a small little bit on this one. Little details can help. All right. Dang, this has just got weirdness in it. I'm going to draw it across. Yeah, it's cleaning it up. So to pull on the knife through the cut, so even better slicing action than normal. Do it again over here. It's getting a little bit weird. So I kind of took that from hatchet work. So you kind of slide your hatchet as you swing it. All right. I've got a little bit of a raised mill. That's fine. Well, let's get a little more evenly on there. It's pretty rough. I gotta come this way. What in the... Another bit of a knot, which is fine. Okay, so at this point, we're getting pretty close to being finished. I mean, just in terms of surface texture, you know, this needs a little more attention. I'll go back on that. It's just a matter of very slowly and carefully taking just a little bit off at a time. You know, I'll just try it right now. We'll just give it a shot real quick. Okay, so again, I just want to sort of like feather it across, just lightly, but trying to be even about it. Take off that top layer, a little bit at a time. Little bit at a time. I'll get you there. Well, I'm not liking that, so let's bring it this way. See if I don't get a better texture pulling. I'm going cross grain, you know? And cross grain can be really nice. Sometimes you can pull out some really lovely textures, really lovely cross-grain textures that shine differently. Sometimes it's just a pain. Now I am bringing this into my thumb just a little bit, and it's quite sharp, so that lets you know how little effort I'm putting behind that. I'm just only slightly getting in there. I don't know if that's going to clean up as much as I like. Well, let's give the other side a look to see. Same deal. Just slightly pulling it across. Not going to cut myself. And then when it catches, I just give it a little bit of a twist so it's sliding through again, Blades cut on push and on slice. It's a weird thing to say. Blades cut on push and slice. It's one of those like inscrutable bumper stickers or those mean sayings that just like, does that mean anything? I don't think that means anything. I think that's just gobbledygook. And sometimes you just can't quite, and it just won't, and I just try and live with it. This is another point where you can end up just carving and carving and carving and get something super thin, and sometimes that's really lovely depending on the kind of wood you're working with. I've worked with some wood that, some cottonwood actually. I was able to get very thin. It was very nice, very pretty. Not a super durable wood, but it's a spoon, not a hammer or something. Cottonwood carves actually pretty nice in my mind. It has a kind of a boring color. It's just, white, and it gets dingy. So you might want to, I think it's a good place if you want to do some different kinds of finishing. Cottonwood might be kind of, anyways, this is cherry, not cottonwood. Okay, so final thing here is we have gotten all of our planes, the flattish areas, and this stuff here. What we need to do now is get some of these edges cleaned up. Some of them are nice and sharp, and the truth is, I just feel like it's not as durable, and I'm trying to add a final little bit of finish that will ultimately show that this is, I'm not going to talk about whether this is too rough or not rough enough. It's a spoon. What I can do about it, though, is give it a little bit of extra finish so that when someone looks at it, they know that it's not just been a carved spoon. Someone took some time with it, which, is what I'm doing, taking some time with it. So I'm just going to trim these little edges back a little bit. This kind of follows that around. So it's just this little bit. Here, I'll bring it up a little bit more. Oh man, I'm getting reflections in my eyes. Okay. And then again, I'll follow this down just a little bit. And a lot of times when you're taking this little bit, it won't batter too much on the grain, and then other times it grabs that grain. I'm going to bring this into the middle here a little bit, and then I'm going to follow this edge up to meet it until it comes out. Okay, happy enough with that. And the same thing over here. A little bit of shavings at a time. There we go. Then we'll come back this way. Again, right up to the edge, to the end rather. Follow it around. It's only the littlest detail, and people might not even notice it, but ultimately, I think it just does add that little bit of extra, a little bit of extra oh, come on. A little bit of extra attention to detail, like how I just didn't pay attention to the wood grain and had this happen. Or attention to the camera, and you probably didn't see that. I'll know when I review it. Anyways, I think I've just wonked my wood up. Can I say that on YouTube? Anyways, so that's giving me a little bit more of a flat edge up here again. So again, just gonna There we go. Or sharp edge, I should say. And yeah, down here as well. And this I like because I've already set up this flat edge on, or flat plane here. And I'm just going to follow it until it catches this wood just a little bit. I had a little bit of a actually pull out on that before. So I'm going to come in like so. Like that. And then this is falling grain that way, so. And around the edge. Again, sunlight off the blade, into the eyes, not great. There's a little bit of a weirdness to that. Just flatten that a little bit. Okay. And again, we're kind of coming along here. Doesn't feel like it's catching at all. So I can just pull it up to the tip. A lot easier for a right-hander to do it that way. If you're ambidextrous, man, I bet you make great spoons. All right, yeah, and then again, we've got a little bit of an edge issue around this spoon. Not super happy with how that's going. So we're just gonna, a little bit of a time, knock this down, flatten that out. It doesn't need to be a big lift up scoop at the end, because you still need to get it into the bowl, you know? Get it under the potatoes. That little bit of meat's in at the bottom. That last bit of gravy. Spoons are great, right? Gotta dig spoons. Eating gravy with a fork. Terrible. Oh, there we go. So, tip of this spoon, you can actually see it flex a little bit there, can't you? The tip of this right here is kind of thick. I'm going to leave it that way. I've learned that I actually don't mind that. It's got enough of an engagement angle, I think. I might flat. Actually, you know what? Oh, I just got it dirty a little bit. I am going to take that down just real quick. Let me get back in here. Okay. So this is... Oh. This is a little thick. I got a weird angle on it. Fix that. Or break the spoon. You know. I mean, not intentionally, not like in some childish rage, but just like in a, whoops, cracked it, squeezed it, weird. So bring it back a little bit. Okay, how are we looking? Yeah, it's a little bit better. And then I want to take this final shape back just a scooch along the tip. Just kind of lift it up a little. Add to the visual flair without actually having, oh geez, out of your way, aren't I? Without actually having it be too weird. Okay. Yeah. Just come along here. And come along here. That's actually okay already. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. All right. Come back for the final finishing. Please. And thank you.